So, people don't know this, but the Stormers, the DHL Stormers, are joined first in the South African Conference, along with the Sharkies. And then the Bulls are third, and the Lions, 2 games in hand, they prop up the table, number 4. And I just want to say that for those who tune in for the last 40 minutes in Johannesburg, the Stormers won that second half 17 points to 6.
I don't believe
Yes, baby! I said the Stormers would win, I just didn't say which half. But I mean, we are charitable in Cape Town, and you know,
Sure.
the message went out to Dobbo. Zels needs a little bit of love after wearing that Lions jersey. Please give him a bit of love. I don't think he felt they were going to give them 24 points with that kind of love. But the Lions won, and fair play to the Lions.
Absolutely.
They won with 30% ball, and they actually played with rugby intelligence, which you haven't always seen from them. And that's not a backhanded compliment. That is just the reality. They're helter-skelter. They're a team that tends to have moments of brilliance and then the absolute bizarre, and they let teams back in. I thought they were clinical. They struck when they had to. They broke first-time tackles. And the Stormers will look back on this game and say 59 tackles made, 22 entries into the opposition, 22 as opposed to 6. 6 penalties conceded as opposed to 14 received. Didn't miss a kick at goal and still came up 7 points short. Just not good enough.
Mate, as Chopper would say, not bloody good enough, mate.
Not good enough, mate.
Not
Hard
good.
enough. I think Chopper would say that to them as well.
Correct, mate. Mate, you spoke about playing with a bit of intelligence, and you know, as much as rugby changes, it stays the same. The reality is, if you kick, if you put your boot to the ball, mate, your chances of success go up. 71% of games have been won by the team that kicks more than their opponent, and I think there are a lot of teams that are finding that out again the hard way. Rugby's not a game that rewards holding on to the ball.
Well, it's holding on to the ball. You've just said that because it would reward the Stormers if they had held on to the ball, because that was the biggest crime of their 80-minute performance. Was they did everything well. Their lineout was functioning well. The scrum wasn't dominant, but it was competitive.
Yeah.
They were making the line breaks. They had all the possession. They just didn't have a respect for the pull. Ndoba and I had a good debate about this earlier in the week. And it's not being negative around the team. It's just pointing out the reality. You make a break, you go 25 meters, you don't go to ground, and your support cleaners are there to keep the momentum. You throw the miracle pass, it goes back 10 meters, it gets knocked on, and a team like the Lions pounce. They're incredibly good at counter-attack inside. And it's this thing that with the Stormers, because of the likes of Amani, a Damien, a Sasha, a Warwick from the back, they can throw the miracle passes, they can do the miracle plays, but not everyone in that squad is designed to be a miracle maker. There's piano players and there's piano movers, and I felt that too many of the piano movers were trying to play on Saturday, and it was a disaster. Okay.
France Malabo wasn't too bad 2 weeks ago, but yeah, certainly.
Francie, 150 games for the Stormers, incredible achievement. I'm sure that he would have wanted to end it a bit better. And then the thing about those kind of games, I mean, people lose shape, they lose their personality. I mean, look at Salman Marat. He looks a lot different from the guy who started. And you'll see that in the image we're about to show. A big congratulations to France Malabo on the 50th.
Geez.
And Salman Marat distinctively looks like Neil
He takes his boots off, he looks completely different.
He looks like Neil He looks like a prop. But we're going to talk in greater depth about the Stormers, about the Sharkies, about the Bulls, obviously the Lions. We got URC, Vodacom URC to talk about. We got top 14. We got the greatest competition in the world to talk about, Super Rugby Pacific.
Oh, mate.
We got top 14, and we got the Japanese League with a few funnies thrown in there. Our South African guys are just doing brilliantly there. And I can see Faf de Klerk's just on a cool holiday at the moment. Never seen a traffic cop like that. Faf, who is a dynamo. I mean, he tackles everything. He takes on guys 6'9". What's happened to him? Too much sushi?
I don't know.
He's just waving guys through.
I don't know what it is. He's in a different time zone.
He is, mate. And it's very charitable as well. And then obviously we hit the 50 million views. Thanks to all of you in the last 2 years supporting us on every platform, every social media platform, and here on YouTube. 50 million views. And to Stecco, that incredible prize. It's 42,900 Rand. When I said last week it was 32, it's gone up by 10,900. Who knows? Next week it may be 52,900. But that inverter, go to our WhatsApp channel. You have to be when I say a subscriber, just join the tribe. There's no cost. You just have to kind of be on there. SA Rugby Magazine's Facebook page. If you go onto my Twitter feed, it's there. It's been pinned. It's all over the place. Just look for it. And all you've got to say is why you like the show or why you tune into the show. And we will announce the winner on the Monday after the Stormers beat the Bulls in the ERC. And the terms and conditions that do apply is we don't say which year.
You might have to wait a while for
I'm
that
hoping
prize.
I'm hoping it's a week from now, and that the Bulls haven't listened to Jake and they still think rugby's about scrums and lineouts and nothing else.
Yeah.
But if you look at that Bulls game, we're going to go back to the Stormers. We're going to kind of mix it around because the love I want to show today
It's for the Lions.
is for Ethan Hooker. It's for Ethan Hooker.
Yeah, geez.
And the Sharks, and then the Lions.
Wow.
And then I'm going to show, obviously, love for the Stormers because someone put on a comment, don't listen to Keo. He's obviously Dobbo's mate, and he's obviously in love with the Stormers. And I said, your point? Obviously, I'm in love with the
told them
Stormers.
that up front.
Up front, and I'm Dobbo's mate. And
Yeah.
I mean, 17-6, top of the South African Conference.
What do you want?
What else do you want? We're winning the Curry Cup. We could seal the Curry Cup.
That is classic.
In 2 weeks' time, we beat the Bulls, and it could be that we are the Curry Cup champions.
Tell them the stat about Munster, mate.
So Munster, everyone's saying, oh, the Stormers, they fall from 11. In the season that Munster won it, the second season, when they came to Cape Town, and they beat the Stormers in front of 56,300 and something. I see there's a couple of figures that are going around. Some say 356, some say 336, so 300 plus. 56,300 plus. The Stormers lost that one 19-14 in the last few minutes. Munster won 7 games on the trot to get into the playoffs and then beat, I think it was Glasgow away, they beat Leinster away, and they beat the Stormers in the final. They lost 7 games and drew 1. They had 10 wins out of 18, and they won it. And no one asked where any other team was. But I'll tell you, Leinster ended with 79 points, in league points that season. Munster ended with 55. That's 24 league points behind Leinster. They won the URC.
Yeah.
So that's, when you're talking a league that comprises a playoff, you've just got to get into that top 8, and then anything is possible. You win one. First season that happened with the Stormers, the Bulls went to Dublin and knocked over Leinster. All of a sudden, it's the Bulls are coming back to Cape Town to play a Stormers side that wins in the 83rd minute against Ulster, thanks to Martin the box conversion. So you're not out here till you're basically out of that top 8. And so there's hope for the Stormers. There's life for the Stormers because on the back end, when they have that run of about 4 home games, hopefully the Sashes, the Marnies, the Damons will all be back. And it doesn't matter what you say. And it's not making excuses. Of course it's making excuses. The only guy who ordinarily would be starting in that Stormers backline that played the Lions would be Warwick Gelant at fullback. No one else would have got a start if the Hotzenbergs and the rest were there. And Paul de Vet would probably have started or ahead of Herschel Yankee. So of that start, and the problem there was with the backs as well. I mean, they just didn't hold on to that pull at all. And defensively, they were just not up to it on the day. So hope for the Stormers. They've got this week off. They are training very hard. I have it on good authority. They were there at 5:30 in the morning for a few sessions. Theory sessions, shrink sessions, Dobbo sessions. But they've been putting in the hard yards, and it's again that losing bonus point. It may seem like nothing now. The two points they got out of that when they could have been 5. When the season ends, those 3 points could be the difference between making the top 8 or not. And then with all their players back, you got to back them to go to most places and have a puncher's chance, a heavyweight's chance of actually landing a blow and winning. So not all doom and gloom for the Stormers, and also let's not detract from an outstanding Lions win. And a great win for the Lions because with games in hand, it puts them right up there. That table is so congested between 4 and 12 or 13. So a lot of teams play for, which makes the URC a very good competition.
Yeah.
You were the guy who pointed him out to me, Ethan Hooker. You talk about building for the future, shaping the future, our Stecco giveaway, power changing the
up,
face of
Stecker.
everything, sustainability.
Yep.
Wow. That kid, as you told me last year, you said, watch this kid who's playing for the Sharks in the Currie Cup. His name's Ethan Hooker. He's a Westville boykie. He is the real deal. He's only 21. He's starting to shape like a monster on the wing because they have so much midfield talent there. And he's going to play for the Springboks this year at some stage.
Definitely.
Of all the kids coming through in the backs, I just thought he is just such a wonderful athlete to watch. He's big, he's strong. It's like when they said about Inga Tigamala when he went to league. He's big, he's round, he's worth £1 million. But he's not round, he's just big and strong.
Yeah.
Over 100 kgs, I think he's about 6'3". Wow. Now, if you look at the winners we've been playing, the Colbys and the Kurt Lees, it just gives Rassie another strike dimension if he's not playing the stepping combination. It just gives us more options at a national level. But Sharks, Ethan Hooker, that back line, which is seen as primarily a second-choice back line, if Jaden Hendrickson wasn't there, they would normally have played Jordan at 10 then. Fassi's not there. Mapimpi's not there. Andre Esterhazy and Andre the Giant wasn't there. My goodness, those other kids wouldn't have got a chance. They came in, and he was good. Hooker was good. Jordan at fullback was good. The center combination, the veteran Lakanya Arm, he led like a general. The guy next to him from Polris, one that got away, it's down to 20. Give me his name.
Tino Mavaseri.
No, man, the centre.
From where? From the Sharks?
Yeah, of course.
Lorenzo Julius.
Exactly. I just want to
The boogeyman.
concentrate. You're the boogeyman, yeah. And then obviously Sia Mizuko at 10 doesn't miss a kick.
Yeah.
And Grant Williams. I love Grant Williams at 9. Okay. Now that back line just rocked at Loftus.
They did rock, and I think maybe some of those poor performances in Japan, some slip tackles, might just be a lump in the throat because there are some old dogs looking back westwards towards South Africa, watching some of these young guns come through. And I think some of these guys have been put on notice. You are not going to be on a free ride to the next World Cup. I think Ethan Hooker is definitely going to push for a place in the midfield in the box starting lineup. And I think Lorenzo Julius is not far behind, if at all. Play with a lot of confidence. Ethan Hooker is one of those guys where every touch has a positive result. Bit of James Lowe in him in that regard. And that's massive. It's not just that his upside is high. It's that his floor is so high as well. Like, he doesn't make mistakes. Error rate's low. Always goes forward. Can make some nice touches. Sees the field. So I think he's a fantastic prospect. And I think he will definitely push those guys. Maybe for the 12 jersey, I think he's a guy who's got real prospects in the midfield. So Sharks are on fire, using their backs to the best possible ability. Jake spoke about the speed of that Sharks backline after the game. He said we couldn't keep up with their speed. And I think there's probably something in that. They were electric. And when we saw the lineups that were going up to Loftus, and when I saw that Bulls bench, I thought the second half is only going to be one team in this thing. But it was the reverse.
Well, they should have been in the context of 15 against 12 for a good 10 minutes of the game in the second half. All the dominance with the Bulls. Line-out dominance, scrum dominance. Your mate, Wilco Lowe, was just killing it, sending another bloke into the medical tent on a Saturday night, recovering by the next Friday, thinking, thank the good Lord that session is over for like the next 6 months. Imagine having to scrum against Wilco Lowe training every day.
No.
Jeez, okay. I mean, the guy's a beast, a monster. In all the right ways. A lovable monster, one you want on your side.
Yeah.
But no team with a 15-on-12 advantage should lose to any team. When you're 12-10 up, you've got it all. And great credit to the way the Sharks hung in there. They scrapped, they fought, and then they backed themselves with that back line. Speaking to the veteran, the lovable, and the original Doyon, Gavin Rich, from Supersport and every other publication in this country. Business Day, Supersport, he's been around. And there's no one that knows Sharky World more than Gav. And he said to me, this performance has got David Williams' paw prints all over it. He said, okay. David Williams has been working very hard with the team. I think Plum may have been on a break for a couple of weeks overseas, come back a little bit later. But he said the way they played is very much David Williams style. And sometimes in adversity, someone else gets an opportunity and you stumble upon, like New Zealand did with Scott Robinson. Wallace Satiti would never have been the first choice starter if Blackadder hadn't got injured.
Yeah.
He played against us at Ellis Park and hasn't looked back. I mean, he had a great Test season. Injured himself against Italy. He's out for the Super Rugby season, but he'll be back for the Test season. But we would not have known about Wallace Satidi as a Test player if there wasn't for injury. That Sharks back division would not necessarily have played if everyone had been fit and available.
No, definitely not.
So, wow, that just reinforces that thing of a squad system, giving players an opportunity, especially when you're expecting players to play 20 to 25 games a season in 2 different competitions, excluding any internationals. But the Sharks, it's great to see them top of the table, joint first, because they play 1 game less of the South African Conference, to see them consolidate the position in the top 4, and to see it done not just with the Galacticos, because there was no Eben, there was no Ox, there was no Sia in that pack.
No,
I mean,
Jalen Hendrickson, yeah.
but in that pack, I
Yeah.
think Dylan Richardson as well, he's played for Scotland at hooker. Through ancestry, so he's a South African boykie, but he played for Scotland, as do many. But
Duhani,
yeah. What a kilt. What a kilt you got. What's under that kilt? It's a South African flag. It's part Speedo. I wonder if he plays with a South African Speedo under those shorts. I wonder. We'll have to ask him. But just wonderful expression and just smiles on their faces. And the Sharks in the professional age, we're not talking about Natal now, the Sharks have to be strong, and they kind of have to be up there in South African rugby. And it's great to see them in the URC kind of in a top 4, not bottom 4, where they were languishing in the last season, missing that top 8 playoff. So great to see the Sharks playing the way they are, and to see talent coming through there. And even better is to see the talent coming through from Durban.
Yeah, no, certainly the makeup of that roster, certainly a lot of homegrown guys. You mentioned Ethan Hooker from Westville, and I grew up in Durban, so I love to see the Sharks on top. I love to see those guys flying. Fantastic win for them. I think probably the result is more down to how poor the Bulls were. I mean, the Sharks deserve massive credit for the result, but the Bulls were certainly off in that game, and I think they need to make some fundamental changes there to the way that they're playing. I think the Bulls are probably a little bit guilty of thinking they're the Springboks in South African rugby. And those days are pretty much over where, Buckies and Victor and Pierce Spies and those guys, Dion Stegman, could literally just go route 1 and run over people. And I think maybe when Jake saw that Sharks team that was picked to come up there missing a lot of those bruises, he thought, hey, we can play some one-pass rugby, get over the gain line, quick ball, and it's try time.
Well, you described in the first 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
When Jan Hendrik went over.
Yeah.
It was exactly that.
Yeah.
Broke a few tackles, pop pass, ran a great line. Jan Hendrik under the post, 7-0, 2.5 minutes. You thought, this is going to get messy. The 16 points is going to be conservative that I've given it to the Bulls. And then even in the second half, I thought the Sharks scrapped so well in the first half, but they're not going to hang around for the last 20. Their bench doesn't look great. It's all going to... And then when the sending off started happening because of the pressure up front, Walker was just destroying them. Basically, it counted for 3 blokes going. And you thought, there's no way this team can lose from here. But then when they struck, and I mean, Tino... how do you pronounce it? Mafaseri from Zimbabwe. Played for UWC. He has played for Zimbabwe. A lot of questions being asked, is he available for the Springboks? He's played for Zimbabwe. He was instrumental in winning Rugby Africa, which is the continental championship, which doesn't include the Springboks. And the winner of that this year will go through to the Rugby World Cup in Australia. Zimbabwe haven't been at the World Cup since 1991 when Adrian Garvey played for them, before he played for the Springboks. Namibia has dominated that competition, but Zimbabwe, lots going on in their rugby. When you get players like Tino they're plying their trade here, but playing for Zimbabwe, which is a great thing as well. And then a couple of Australians who've played for the Wallabies who've come back, who were Zimbabwean born and are playing there. So they're looking for players overseas. Right. They do have Zimbabwean kind of ancestry or were born there, and are playing good rugby and bringing them back. And they're a lot different team at the moment. So to the Zimbabwe Sables, big shout out there. We're looking at you. We love you. Govs, make sure that we love you. And there's a big ex-Zimbabwean contingent. If you think of the Teichmans, you think of the Skinstads. They come out of Zimbabwe. Back before the day, you think of Ray Mort as well. So we're looking at it with a keen eye, Zimbabwe. But Tino, I saw some of his highlights from UWC. Jeez, the guy's like a Jonah Lomu at times, a beast. But he had an incredible game, 21 out of 22 tackles in his 71 minutes, made a lot of yards, made line breaks, and obviously scored that incredible try. Again, turnover ball, boom, they struck. I just loved watching the Sharks play the way they did. They looked like they were enjoying it. And then, to me, the wonderful thing was Jordan Hendricks' try. I mean, he was beaming 10 meters before he actually crossed the line to score. And then basically, and then when he shanked the conversion, it's like, see, you haven't missed yet. You've missed one. He's kicking at 94%. In the URCs. Before that game, he'd only had 12 shots. He added another 2. Didn't miss. And then I think Jordan dropped from 84% to 80. He missed a couple, but also kicked some big ones and just played well at fullback. So I think he's also loving his move from Johannesburg back to Durban, where he kind of went to school with his butt, and interchangeable 15 or 10. I think 10's his best position. But they really functioned well with Grant Williams and Sia as a 9-10 combination.
Very much so. Very good players.
And that midfield, that midfield rocked.
Power. Young kids, bulletproof, optimistic, can-do attitude, speed, power, skill.
And then you got the stepper, and you got the power of Hooker, and then you got that boot of Jordan Hendricks at fullback. So
but the way the Bulls played very much brought them into the game.
Completely.
Brought all of that into the game.
They were shambolic, the Bulls.
Terrible.
So they were shambolic, and the Sharks punished them. It would be coach killer kind of stuff when you're watching a team play like that. From a rugby intelligence point of view, it's probably some of the thickest rugby I've seen. That they can't change it on the field, that they can't understand that. Obviously there's some bright guys from an education point of view. When you listen to Jake talk about the intelligence of his side, now surely they can do the math. 15, 12, you have a 3-player advantage. Now, if you just play hands, if you've got possession, you should be making yards and you should be scoring tries. And
maybe they just don't have the autonomy, the control to do that. Because the Bulls have played in 10 matches this year, they've kicked more than their opponent in 7 of them, and they've won 6 of those. And in the 3 where they kicked less, they lost 2. They got a 33% win rate when they kicked less. They came out here, they tried to carry the ball on a low pass ratio, so it was very much one-pass rugby against the Sharks. And all that does is, if you don't get gain line, is it tires your guys out, puts pressure on your breakdown, the errors eventually pop up, and then the other team strikes quickly from those transition opportunities, and then your guys are under the sticks thinking maybe our plan's wrong. And the fact that it took so long to change, even with a guy like Willie Leroux there's a lack of tactical agility in that team that is very concerning. And the Bulls do have power, but they need to add a little bit of subtlety to that game. And by subtlety, I don't mean extra passes. I just mean the defenders have to be kept guessing in the backfield and on the line. And I think that's probably what's missing from that Bulls team at the moment.
If you take this Bulls team, would you liken it to some of the inconsistent Bok teams pre-Rassie, where backs to the wall, they get up and they demolish a team like Leinster at home? The most incredible scrum performance, taking every chance. It's like for Falk and Vaderland, they were out there and they hammered it. Andrew Porter still trying to find his arse in Johannesburg somewhere, because that's where they pushed it to. Okay, and then they go out and they lose to Glasgow the next week and don't play particularly well. And Glasgow take the full capacity crowd, Carl Steyn on the wing, Franco Smith, South African coach and captain, inspired that team, and they finished the stronger. Forget altitude. The attitude was great. They'd handled altitude. Then you take this Bulls team, they host a Sharks team that was without 11 players. And of those 11, 7 or 8 would have started. So it's effectively 7 or 8 of that starting 15 would not have been there ordinarily. And it was as if they had won that game before kickoff, and then it wasn't helped by the early try. 7-point advantage.
Walco just grading forward. People were just I think they just assumed they were going to coast.
So you take the 7 points away. And then for the majority of the game, it was 29-7 to the Sharks. 29-5, because they got another try. But then they only scored in the 78th minute, the Bulls. So 29-5, the Sharks under the pump all the time up front. To do that to the Bulls at Loftus is an indictment. As much as we complimenting the Sharks, it's an indictment of the Bulls. It's an indictment of what's going on there in certain games. We spoke about that last quarter fade for the last 2-3 years with them. They are 7 from 10. So, look, they consolidated number 3 position. But you just find in the games you expect them to win and win well, they're not winning.
There's a lack of consistency.
And that was the same in the Champions Cup, the Saracens game, that you just thought, hang on a second, they should have figured out this whole thing, how to play with that gusting wind in the first half. And then the way they imploded against Northampton at Loftus as well. So you talk about the fortress Loftus. Northampton did them a dirty, and the Sharks did them a dirty. Northampton, a team at that stage that had won 1 from 7 in the Premiership. So a lot of questions for me with that Sharks lineup. Yes, their injuries up front, but there's so much depth there. And, Jake's comments as well. It's not how I coach. It's not what I told the players. It's quite significant if the players then are overruling you on the field.
But also, like that sort of feedback after a game where it's not what I told the players, and I'm going to tell the players to do something. That reminds me very much of Tuti's era. I mean, you're at this point in the season, you're well past telling the players anything. Like, the plan is in place. It's very much about execution. You shouldn't be having to regroup on a Monday and go point things out. Like, if that's where you're at, then you're probably in quite a lot of trouble. And this is a very good Bulls team that is flag bearing for South Africa. So I rate them and I want them to be very successful. But there's a funny disjointedness about this team.
Has the schoolmaster gone woke, Jakey?
Nah, never.
Because when I say gone woke, on soft, in terms of, like, in the old days, Jake used to just go ballistic. I mean, he used to give them the hairdryer treatment. The blow dryer would come out pre-game, halftime. I mean, he would tell a few hard truths. He just seems so calm and chilled after a defeat these days that I wonder, is it just because of his health?
Maybe he just needs to get more involved there, I think. Is actually just get his hands on that team even more, be it every single training session, every single minute of the day, and kind of put his stamp on it. Because I remember when he was with the Box, Jake would often talk about how the players are in a position to make some calls. He was quite progressive about all that sort of stuff. So this team just very much feels like the headmaster gave us some rules that we have to stick to, and we apply it with our eyes closed. So if it's not working, we just keep doing it. There's a lack of that sort of agility about this team.
Well, look, when he said the players are in a position to do it, you did have John Smith at 2, Victor Matfield at 5, and Farid Apri at 9.
True that.
I mean, you give it to those 3 players and you say to them, make some calls on the field. I'm actually trusting them.
But look what he did in Australia with the Brumbies. I mean, there's guys we'd never heard of. Jesse Mogg was an unknown. He turned that guy into a fantastic player. That was a great team. They won the Aussie Conference, I think.
Won the Aussie Conference. They got to the final. They beat the Bulls in the semi-final at Loftus, and then to rub salt in the winds, to say Jake vir die mense in Afrikaans. Julle is uitstekend gespan. Dit is 'n skitterende unie. Die Bulls sal weer terugkom. Maar vandag is ek 'n Brumby. And he spoke it all in Afrikaans, and they just hate me for doing it.
If it was me, I would put guys like Namakaba at open side. I'd play a heavy kicking game, beat guys off the ball, speed to the ball, and go aim for those turnovers at those breakdowns, and then let the Bulls be the team that's attacking from transition.
But it's again, and Rassie said it to me a couple of years ago. It was the Stormers who had beaten the Bulls at all again against the run of play, against the kind of the build up. The Bulls had so much possession, so much dominance, and counter-attack. Boom, they scored. And I sent Rassie a text and said to him, can you believe the result? He said, yeah, the game's not about having the ball, it's about not having the ball. And when you get it, you must know what to do with
Correct.
it. And this obsession with having the ball, 70% of possession, not knowing referee interpretations, especially at the breakdown, when is a tackle or release, when it's not. Because again, in this weekend's games, and I saw that in Super Rugby Pacific as well, which I watched quite closely, and we'll get to that, is players seem confused about when it is a tackle or release or not.
Very much so.
So it's like, put him down, or the guy doesn't put him on, he says it's a maul, but he hasn't even gone to ground yet.
Yeah.
Or the player goes down and he just holds that ball for that fraction and gets away with it. Or he puts it down, the guy's over it like a jackal, and it said you didn't let him release it.
Or he goes down, you release him, and he gets up and runs off with the ball.
Exactly, yeah, and there's no tackle held. So it's if you're a great defensive side with a great counter-attacking game, and a good 10 or 15 who can, especially in an ideal world, you'd want him left foot, right foot, and maybe coming out on a wheelchair. it'd be great for your points.
Yeah.
But no, it's just you want the full package of what they do. It's percentages, and percentages means playing in the right areas of the field where you're not putting yourself under pressure. So many of our teams play on our own 10-yard line, and they play laterally, and they go through 5, 6, 7 phases. They kind of get knocked back, and a side like Leinster, who's so well drilled, punishes you on that because they're waiting for that turnover, and then they strike. And they strike with rugby intelligence because they understand width, they understand space.
Yeah.
And they also understand lazy runners, especially in the last 20 minutes of a game.
Well, the thing with that is that in the old days, you could do that. If you were a more powerful team, and when I say old days, 10 years ago, if you were the more powerful team, you could get gain line with your monsters and just keep rolling like that. But what's changed is defense coaches have given the defense more initiative by saying, hey, you guys can make calls. If this is the picture you see, heavy line speed, and let's go catch those guys with the ball behind the gain line. So the attack doesn't have the initiative like they used to all the time when they get gain line. There's still opportunities for the defense to counter. And I think that's kind of added to the pressure and made it more difficult to keep the ball through phases and keep momentum. And it just swings back to defense, which is a story you've probably seen 50 times in your life. Every time you think the game has shifted to be attacking, the defense finds a way to claw it back and take control.
Well, we go back to the lovable Chiefs against the Eagles. Super Bowl. Has defense ever crushed attack like that in a Super Bowl final? From what you've told me, no, not in recent years.
Yeah.
Now, you go and you look at most of the World Cup finals, defense beats attack. The best attacking team invariably loses to the greatest defensive team.
Correct.
And we've been the beneficiaries of that a lot. And if you go back to that 32-12 game, that on the scoreline was as dominant as the play was.
Yeah.
But we built that pressure through an incredible set piece, playing in the right field position, blitz defense. England kind of playing behind the ball in 2019 in that final. And when we got the opportunity to strike, we struck. Great try between Mapimpi and then Chesney. Just individual genius at the end to kind of to add the final kind of cherries on that cake.
Yeah. People say if Jake's Bok teams were boring, didn't Brian Habana set the record for most tries at the 2007 World Cup?
Most tries.
36-0 against England.
40-plus points in the quarterfinal, 37-20 against Fiji, 34-13 in the semi-final against Argentina. And the thing that Eddie had said to him, mate, when England challenged Jake through the media, can you go out and score 4 tries in a World Cup final? And he said, mate, we just have to score 1 more point.
Bingo.
And that final was such that it was... a lot of finals just don't have. We saw 12-11 All Blacks against the Springboks 2023, 15-6, 15-12, 95 when we won it, 8-7 New Zealand 80 in 2011.
11.
So it's again, so many of those finals are determined by great defense and then kicking your goals. So when I look at the URC, I mean, we know Leinster's going to end top, okay? So it's who can go to Dublin and maybe knock them over in a semi-final. And are they still going to, have they come off winning the Champions, winning the Investec Champions Cup? Is their focus there if they've won it? Because the final of the URC gets played after that. Are they on holiday? Do they believe, who cares? Or that's going to be their biggest conundrum. How do they manage that last month of the season in May when they play the final? Because they should get to the final, or they definitely be in the semi-final of the Champions Cup. And then how do they manage the URC semi-final, final component, then going into the British and Lions tour, a British and Irish Lions tour to Australia, where the focus of the core of that Leinster side will be, because they're probably going to be on the plane with Farrell.
How much of that do you think for Leinster is actually about juggling, so having to think about campaigning on multiple fronts, and how much of it do you think is a BMT issue for Leinster? Because they seem to stretch this lead in the URC every season. They're table toppers, but they don't feature at the sharp end. Do you think it's because they're just sort of distracted by the other campaigns, or do you think it's something inherently that's missing in Irish rugby?
I think it's a combination of their focus is with the Test side and the Champions Cup, chasing the 5th star. And their big thing was chasing the 5th star was because Toulouse at that stage had 5. Toulouse now got 6. So if they get the 5th star, they're still second. This was going to make them the most successful with Toulouse team in Europe. And given they only won their first one in the 2009-2010 season, it's come in the last 15 years. But if you look at their side at full strength, which has got 15 or 16 in the 23 Irish internationals, when do they actually get to play for Leinster? It's seldom they put all 15 out there. So at best you'll get 10 or 11 of them, and that was what we saw in the semi-finals of the last few URC playoffs, and they lost it. So that team has never really played together. As good as their systems are, they play together in the Champions Cup, and they play together when they play for Ireland.
Is it a bit like the Curry Cup? Remember when they get to the semi-finals and the Boks come back, it kind of shakes up the whole continuity.
And they've not been a part of this 21 round kind of like marathon.
Right.
So and I think that's where Leo Cullen thought juggling it by keeping a core of those guys who've gone through the 19 rounds to get to the semi-final and final. But then they were missing one or two of those X-factor players that kind of, because their defeats by a point, you know, when the Bulls, they lost by a point even though they scored late.
Yeah.
It was the Jack Crowley drop goal that beat them when Munster beat them. And then the only one they really got done, and that was the first time they ever played away in a playoff. First time ever. That was at Loftus, and they took a pounding. And they tried to put most of the internationals in that side. I think they had 21 internationals, and the two that weren't have played for Ireland subsequently. So effectively 23 internationals in that field against the Bulls that day. And the Bulls destroyed them. It was one of the great Bulls performances.
Fantastic.
So when you see that performance, and then you see a performance like you saw against the Sharks, you got to say, now, come on, guys. We know what you're capable of.
Big time.
And this is just unacceptable.
Big
and then what's surprising with Jake's comment, they now see how much they miss Cameron Honeycomb, they miss his pace around the field, and that if one guy's going to determine whether you can win a game or not, you've got serious problems.
Exactly.
So with the greatest respect to Jake, and then also understanding what Cameron Honeycomb brings to the party. He's in his second season of URC. He's 22 years old. He shouldn't be the differentiator between a win and a loss, because you've got to play him every game, otherwise you're not kind of going to make grounds. I just thought the decision-making was poor. They didn't know how to manage a game when they were 15-12 up. White line fever, they wanted to maul everything over the try line. It was never going to work, and they underestimated the fighting spirit of the Sharks. They scrapped. They played for that jersey. You haven't seen that often from the Galacticos, the mercenaries, but they played for that jersey, and it was great to see local boys. Jordan Hendricks are there, like we said, Ethan Hooker from Westville. It's not guys boarding from Grey College necessarily, or from Cape Town. Paul Boys High, Paul Roos. A few Paul Roos guys there, but it's nice to see local talent coming through and prospering at the Sharks. So to David Williams and to Plum, great win, guys, and a very necessary win. To Dobber and the Stormers, accountability. No one's doubting the effort of the Stormers at all. Nope. It's like, but you've got to protect the pull. You know, when I was with the Box in 2000, Harry Fudun went on to Argentina. We were there, which was the first test in Buenos Aires, and we were there for 10 days. And his whole thing was, he wanted to play rugby basically like Rusty's teams play it now, with that quality of player. But he felt we don't protect the ball. There's a disregard from players to the consequence of losing a ball. So when we went on tour and we were going to play that Brumby style rugby, which we did, we didn't kick for 72 minutes. We ran Argentina to pieces through the phase plan, the retention of the ball, but we also ran ourselves. We were gassed at halftime. So they took 25 minutes to come out for the second half. And then just kicked penalties, and it was Brahm. At 34-33, Brahm kicked that last penalty. 37-33, we won it. But a great test match. And every player had to get a ball on tour when we left Johannesburg. And there was a consequence if they didn't have the ball with them at breakfast, if they didn't have it with them at lunch, if they didn't have it with them at training. Every time they lost the ball or dropped the ball, there was a consequence, be it a fine or something. And his philosophy was they've got to learn to love that ball and not give it away. Because in a game, don't give it away. The only way you can score tries is if you have a ball. So don't give them the ball. And if you look at a Stormers' performance and you look at the Bulls in a lesser degree, there was so much charitable give. They'll do the hard jobs and just give it to a very good counter-attacking team. And it's like you play like you train. And if I'm knocking on balls or I'm just throwing off a miracle pass, I'm going to do that in the game. And I think that's the hardness that we have to see in the Bull setup and also the Stormers setup, that there has to be greater player accountability for keeping the ball and making the right decision. It doesn't help if I offload the ball beautifully in the tackle to a player in a worse position, he gets smashed. And then I've got a stat that says offload. But it's not an offload. It's a negative a negative play. So lots of work to do, even though they're at very different ends of the table at the moment for the Bulls. And I'll take comfort that they're 7 from 10 in the URC and the Stormers. But to me, it comes down to accountability on the field for decision making. The players are there to do well. The Bulls are good enough to get a top 2 placing in the URC, and the Stormers are good enough to end top 8, around 6, despite the horror start they've had in some of the games that have gone against them. The Sharks, they just got to keep on going, and the Lions, they've got games in hand. The key for the Lions is not to drop that easy one that now they get a team from overseas they should beat, and then they lose like a 44-34 game.
Yeah, I mean, if the Lions beat the Bulls at Loftus, it's game on. I mean, they're straight back in the picture, very much in the race. And say what you like about the Lions, they are tactically very sharp. the work rate is there, and some of the key sort of features of a team. You got Asanati and Tlabakanya, tight head prop. You got Q and Horn at the back. You got some key players in key positions that can turn games for these guys, and they've got that belief. So they're going to be exciting to watch.
And I mean, for any visiting team coming here in terms of playoff, you've got to think Durban would be a hell of a tough place to come in and beat the Sharks in a playoff setup, especially with all the Galacticos.
If they're in the mood.
If they're in the mood, but I'm sure you'll see Bongi there, Oxley, I'm sure you'll see Eben back for that playoff game. He plays the big ones.
Yeah.
They would be bloody hard to beat then, okay? But you get the sense the Bulls have to play at home if they're going to have any chance. They're just so vulnerable on the road. The Lions, they're a side that they get into top 8, they could go and knock anyone over, but I can't see them doing it 3 in a row because they're going to have to play away from home. I also don't see the Stormers being able to knock 3 in a row. The overseas record's never been that good. But they're capable of knocking anyone over when that side's at full strength, no matter where they play.
Spot on.
But if you look at the URC and you look at Rassi's call-ups, there's no players from overseas. There's no under 21 players. There's 56 players, 18 from the Sharks, 17 from the Bulls, 13 the Stormers, and 8 from the Lions. The key is who hasn't made it, because if you haven't made that squad and you think of what's overseas, and one of the guys I think of is Ruben van Heerden from the Stormers.
Yeah.
He's outstanding last year at lock in terms of effort, minutes played, on-field actions, but there's clearly something that's missing in his game that Rassi has looked at and said, I don't see you as part of my top 8. He's picked 4 locks and 4 overseas. Does it surprise you that a guy like Ruben's not there?
Very much so. I think Ruben is an underrated player, and in terms of his form, has probably warranted a call-up. I'm not saying he's a sort of world-beating lock, but he's certainly got value, and I think he's had some good performances. I'm surprised that, given that it's an alignment camp and it's about sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and make sure everyone is mentally on the same page, that you've got guys like Eben Etzebeth in the camp, but not a Corné Raal or a Ruben van Heerden. There's some youngsters coming through. I would have thought you'd want to get them all in the mix and on the page. Obviously, Rassi knows his plan better than we do. So it's just some interesting calls there. I would have thought you would have had a much push on younger players there. I love the fact that a guy like Renzo du Plessis is in the mix. I think he's a guy with a potentially high ceiling, a nice prospect to look at. But yeah, I mean, the locks are Ruan Nokia, JF van Heerden, who I think is a good one to have there, and then Eben and Salman Murat. So only 4 locks there as far as I can tell.
And then the ones overseas, just to remind people, you've got an Achia, Snyman at Leinster. You've got Franco, who's out in Japan. You've got Jean Klein, who's playing for Munster.
Yeah.
Did
you have Luet, Franco?
Luet's back again playing. I mean, that's a big one for us. Luet's playing. He's getting through games in Japan.
Jason Jenkins is in town, but not in the mix.
Not in the mix. I think maybe his kind of time has come and gone.
True.
You've got
Reynard Northmar.
Marvin Ory's overseas. He's another option potentially. Yep. So you've got 9 or 10 locks that Rassi's looked at, and you've also got a Peter Steph Tutoy who can play lock. So then where does Ruben van Heerden come into the mix, you know?
I think it tells us kind of what the future is, because I think if in an emergency, Rassi may turn to a guy who is overseas based, a guy like Nicolas Janssen van Rensburg or Une Habstor.
And you're looking at Jean-Luc Dupree, who's played at flank, he's played at lock.
All over the place.
Dan has played at 8, Dupree has played at lock as well. So there are a lot of lock options. Yep. I think lock is one of the areas we are so strong at. Loose forward we're so strong at. When you look at the starting block lineups, fullback, wings, centers, halfbacks, we've identified that Sash is potentially the natural replacement for Andre Pollard as he gets phased out, in terms of he's not going to go beyond the 2027 World Cup. Yeah. He could be coming, like, as Dan Carter tapered off in his career. Yeah. 9, we know we got Graham Williams, we got Jaden. Yeah. They're in the mix. Kobus Reinach and Faf obviously still there and thereabouts as the veterans. The big one was that we were asking, like, who takes from Dukes? Does Lukanya move to 12? It's Jesse at 13, Lukanya 13. Ethan Hooker certainly comes in and starts answering that. With Damian Willemse potentially also 15 to 12. Any other ones you see there?
I'm interested in what happens at fullback, because there's some decisions to be made there. Willie Leroux's not the future at fullback. Fussie's come through quite nicely, but what does it look like around that? Is Damian Willemse the guy they're going to shoehorn into that position as a more regular starter going forward? And if not, could we see the veteran experience of a guy like Cheslin Colby maybe featured at fullback more often? I've said it multiple times. I think his kicking game is very underrated, and he's been around the block and seen everything. And in terms of his age, you kind of expect that the speed factor may not be there indefinitely. So how do you utilize a game breaker like that in the twilight of his career? So there's some decisions to be made around fullback, which I think would be very interesting. Kanan Moody's another one. Where does he go? Is he a wing guy that you're going to use on kick chase and under the high ball? Or are you going to make him the sort of understudy to Jesse Creel as the eventual successor at 13? Lots of calls.
If you look at the kind of players identified, a big strong message, there's a lot of newbies in the mix. 50 plus players played for the Springboks last year. We won 11 out of 13.
Yep.
The 2 successive away wins against Australia in Australia, back-to-back wins against the All Blacks at home, never to be scoffed at. Very few teams have done that, regardless of what transitional phase the All Blacks may be in. A drawn series against Ireland came down to an 82nd minute drop goal, otherwise it would have been a series win.
Yep.
Unbeaten on the tour overseas, blooding a lot of guys. When we look at that 2027 World Cup squad, it may be distinctly different than 2023 by the time we get to next year,
I think it
and
will
the
be.
year after that. And what I am loving about the identification and the selection is it's a phasing out and not an axing.
Totally.
And we've never had that before.
That is so true. That is so true. It's never been a handshake and a thanks for everything. It's been a very sort of acrimonious.
It's been a
divorce.
brutal. These 6 guys go.
Yeah.
I don't care if they've got 100 test caps.
Yeah.
And you must be patient with us while we lose 60% of our games with the new
Spot
guys.
on.
Here you look and you think, Dwayne's actually gone. You look again, we've played so many tests without Lukanya. Look again, Pollard wasn't starting. He was on the bench. Sasha was doing the business. There's a young second rower playing. Ox, all of a sudden, Stephen Kitsov coming back, always been the first choice, getting injured. You think, all of a sudden, Ox is now the guy. He's in place. You look at some of the young hookers coming through now. You're starting to look at that number 3 position and saying, are one of them challenging Abongi for a place at the moment?
Yeah.
In terms of that, his body's taking a greater battering than Malcolm Marx is playing in Japan.
And you'll be 36 at the World
Yeah,
Cup.
and then you just start looking at the options that are around, and we're like, who was going to replace Villy? You know, Damon had done well. He got injured. Fussy came in and took his chances. We've got so many options on the wing now. We're in a very healthy position in terms of talent, and it's also not a case that we've got 20-year-olds and we've got 35-year-olds. There's guys that are
The middle tier's
the
coming
middle
through.
tier. They've come through, and that's the strength
Yeah.
of anything. So Bok Rugby looking healthy. It's going to be a great March, April, and May, and into June for the playoffs of the URC, and then it's test season. We play the 2 games against Italy, and yes, they've been great in the Six Nations so far, and last season. Their only blip was that 96th point that they conceded against the All Blacks in the World Cup. That was an aberration given how they played.
Yeah.
They corrected that with a 29-11 defeat to them at the end of the year tour last November. But taking our attention to New Zealand and looking at what they've got to offer, and Australia to a lesser degree, because we do play those 2 tests, 6th and 13th. I got the dates wrong last week. Apologies for that if you booked your tickets. I had 9th and the 16th.
Hang around for an extra week.
Yeah, and Auckland and Wellington, and we have the Aussies here. My understanding is it's going to be Cape Town and Johannesburg. So great to have the Aussies in town. Joe Smith's still in charge for the Rugby Championship. Joseph Swahili play hasn't excited me as much coming to Union since Sonny Ball Williams. I loved the first round of Super Rugby Pacific. I thought there were great matchups, and yeah, there were high-scoring games like the Samoa,
Western Force and Pacifica.
Pacifica and Moana, and then obviously Brumbies against the Drua. Big scoring game there, and then that 37-36 in Sydney with the Tars. But the 2 big games I looked at from a New Zealand perspective was obviously Canes against the Crusaders opening game, and then Blues against the Chiefs. And they had test match written all over them in terms of intensity, physicality. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it is a little bit of basketball, defense optional, but Super Rugby is great fun to watch, especially for us because we have no vested interest in any of the teams. We're just enjoying it for entertainment value. But I definitely think there has been a bit of an uptick in the intensity of those New Zealand performances. And you could certainly see that the light's gone on, and there's pressure in the sense that, look, the All Blacks are certainly not locked and dialed in. This is a team that you can break into with good performances, and I think everyone is making a run at that. You can see there's that focus in their performances. So I thought it was good fun to watch. Loved that Blues Chiefs game. Damien McKenzie was on fire again, and Crusaders did it. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. Looking forward to more of it.
A lot of physicality in that Chiefs Blues game.
Yeah.
Blues champions from last year, won the final 41-10. They got the reversal at home, lost, big surprise. Their yellow card again significant, but took their chances. Cortez Ratima's cross-cover tackle on Mark Taylor. Wow. I mean, that's the kind of stuff Claude Robinson looks at and says, that's why I want you in the national setup.
Banged a big 50-22.
Yeah, and then interesting enough, we know that with no Richie Moanga, Damien McKenzie and Bowden Barrett will be the 10s, both of them playing 15 in that opening game. I'm sure you'll see them at 10 during the season. Will Jordan at 15 for the Crusaders, outstanding. Eh?
Outstanding, man. James O'Connor back in the mix with a few nice touches to put Will Jordan through on that short gap. But they've got, look, we never ever thought New Zealand were short of playmakers, right? The question is, do they have the tight forwards to stand up against the biggest teams in the world? And that's a question that hasn't been answered yet. But as soon as the game opens up and you've got to have some vision and some hands, those guys are arguably the best in the world at doing that. So definitely high entertainment value.
And those tight forwards are coming. We spoke about it last year. I thought they were hell of a competitor in South Africa, Johannesburg and Cape Town. They really stood up to us. They stood up to Ireland. They won that game. And people forget they lost by a point to France in Paris. And they had the opportunity to they didn't take a penalty. They went for the try. They didn't score the try. But they are certainly a team that, after that loss against Argentina in Wellington, they're a team on the rise, and
they've got the front row forwards. It's the back five in the pack that they have.
And they've got the draw this year with playing the box twice in New Zealand. So it's going to be a crack international season. I keep on saying it, watch Super Rugby Pacific, and it's nice to hear the noise coming out in New Zealand. Greatest competition in the world. We've waited for the Aussies to arrive. They finally here, mate.
Oh, I love it.
And
I love whoever's running the Blues account is doing an absolutely fabulous job. So based on the fact that they lost the opener, they're bottom of the log, so they just flipped the log upside down, and the Blues obviously top of that inverted log, and they were like, we've made a great start to the season. So the Blues guys are having a good chuckle about it and doing a great job with the social media, I think.
And then watch those matches because of the way the season's structured as well. It's pretty confined to you get into the top 8, you play the playoffs, and it's the end of the season.
Yeah.
They're not playing any different competitions. So it's going to be great viewing over the next couple of months. It's full on rugby now till December, okay? We're going to be mass saturation. You're going to see us and hear us everywhere. I'm going to be talking about everything, be it URC, Champions Cup, Test Rugby, Super Rugby, Top 14, Japan League 1, Six Nations again, back on track this weekend. Big talking point, obviously. The biggest talking point in Cardiff is not that Warren Gatlin's gone. It's that the Irish are wearing white jerseys with a sprinkle of green because of the colourblind.
Oh, my goodness, mate. Seriously. Is that what it's come to again, huh? I mean, how many people are actually watching rugby who don't watch because they're colorblind? And how do they get through the rest of their life? Just using the sympathy card to basically change something fundamental in rugby and the traditions in rugby. It's just such a weak source moment in the history of the sport. We got to the stage after a century of rugby with people who are colorblind, deaf, blind, I don't know what, supporting these teams. The stadiums are always full. What it is that we now have to accommodate these people by breaking that tradition makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's just another rescue mission under a woke label. It just irritates the living hell out of me.
But don't you think in the current climate that it should be Wales that should be changing the jersey, not Ireland?
Mate, I think Wales would love to be mistaken for being Ireland at the moment. That's probably their greatest hope, is that somebody would mistake them for Ireland.
Because what they really got to change is the scoreboard, not the colour of jerseys.
Correct, mate.
Because Wales are going to take a beating again. It doesn't matter if Quasimodo and his big bell came in there. It's not going to change anything. They're not going to win a game in the Six Nations.
No, they're not.
Gats left after 14 successive defeats. He wasn't the right guy to come back. Wayne Pivot must be chuckling away. He got a test win in South Africa.
Yeah.
He could potentially have had a series win, but for Damien Williams' heroics at Loftus. So Ireland should go on the march there, win comfortably in Cardiff. The juggernaut keeps going, and it makes Dublin, France against Ireland, a massive game in the context of the competition, unless Italy do something dramatic this weekend and beat France in Italy.
I mean, it's happened before, and
mate, what do you say?
It has happened before. My mate was coaching with Nick Mallett at the time. They did some great things there, but
Omar.
Yeah.
You can say his name, Omar.
So the Italy and France drew the last game, and before that, I think France won 14 in a row. I don't think.
Look, last year was just incredible because they were a penalty that hit the post away from winning in France.
Correct.
But Tomasi Allen wasn't the guy kicking. And he's back playing his 85th test match.
What?
Yes, and we speak
Shut
about him
up.
every week.
85 tests.
85 tests, eh? The guy who played for Western Province under 19, won the provincial championship for us against the Sharks in Durban, then went and played for Scotland under 20s, and then went and played for Scotland because, for those who don't know, we'll keep on repeating it, he is the nephew of John Allen, who played for Scotland and South Africa, the hooker, great storyteller, just a great guy, John Allen. Now, his butt played for the Sharks, under 20s, went to Italy, as most South Africans do, fell in love with a beautiful woman, and basically is an Italian, and had Tomasi Allen, and now he's playing for Italy into his 85th test. He's the record holder. He's on fire in terms of his kicking. And you know what I loved about Italy when I saw them play against Scotland? They were 19-0 down early on. They are a team that understands the value of 3 points.
Yep.
They build points whether they're down or they're up. They take 3. When it's on offer, they take it.
But that's Gonzo Quesada. That's exactly.
And they got to 19-12, and they got the intercept, and all of a sudden they were 19-all, and Scotland were, oops, what's going on? And I think other teams could learn
Big time.
from the Italian approach is bank the 3 every time and back yourself to get the kickoff receive and actually do your exits well.
Spot on.
Because a lot of teams say, well, if we kick the 3, you put them back in our half, we may struggle to get out. Then you're not going to win the match.
You're not going to win the match. And also, if you went into every game like you were Italy playing France, and you just went, look, we're the rank underdogs here, let's play the percentages to the best of our ability. The fact is that the stats are in your favor. The historical performance data backs up what you're doing. So if you're anything more than an underdog, you are guaranteed almost to be successful that way, because you are using statistics that have helped rank underdogs beat serious favorites before. It just doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't apply those tactics. Kick your points when you can't miss. Don't go for the try when the odds are low of actually converting it. And don't have this mindset that, oh, we're going to camp on this side of the field and hold on to the ball, even if it means we don't put points on the board, because bad things might happen if we score and they kick back to us. I mean, come on.
Well, you say, come on. You say it's not going to happen. France won't lose. There's talk of a 7-1 split.
Mate, I've called France to win the Six Nations. It's not happening. They're going to beat Italy, and then they're going to beat Ireland. And Ireland are going to slip up somewhere. Points difference, France are going to win.
Well, if Ireland are going to slip up, they have to slip up against
France.
Against France,
Correct.
okay? And it could come down to who actually has scored the most points in this competition.
Who has the nicer jersey?
It used to be the banker was in Rome, but now the banker is in Cardiff. Who goes and beats Wales? Yeah. You know, Wales can always say, we had the nicest jersey. We kept our side of the field tidy. Wales!
Give me a score.
Wales!
Give me a
Wales! Score. I remember in 1996 when the Boks played, the score was 37-15, I think it was. Andre Markov's last test in charge. Very, very good tour we had overseas with the Boks. And it was still at the old Arms Park. And you walk across. The players actually walked across from the hotel to the ground. It was wonderful. We played them on a Sunday. And there's a newspaper called Wales on Sunday. And these guys were screaming, Wales, Wales, Wales on Sunday. And James Dalton said, Wales on any day, bud. Classic. And that's kind of like where Wales are again. Wales on any day. It is sad because I love that country. I love their rugger.
Yeah.
To our matey Scotty Gibbs, he must just cringe every time he just sees what's going on there. But it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
It seems like Franco Smith is keen to make a little
it'll be the end of his career. Stay at Glasgow and get into the top 4 and build your career there. You go to Wales, start explaining that you've won 2 out of 15.
Yeah.
It doesn't last. It doesn't end very well. So that's Six Nations. The last game is obviously against England and Scotland. It's going to be a cracker. The Calcutta Cup.
Yep.
And let's see if that new dawn was a new dawn from England in terms of their 81st minute escape against France.
Yep.
And we will be giving you our predictions later on in the week once we see the playing squads on our WhatsApp group.
Yes.
And that's where you got to go for our Stecco prize to celebrate our 50 million views. So we're basically celebrating you. Because without you, we wouldn't put this on air. Zels and I will talk rugger all day, every day. We talk a lot of crap. We love talking rugger. We like shooting the breeze. Ons lief 'n bietjie kaak te praat. Hier die rugby in die Kaap. We'll be doing that all year. Hoping to go everywhere, kind of see you guys, meet you guys. And on that basis, we want to say to you, there's so many kind of emails we get, so many comments we get from all over the world. Tell us, drop us a line. You can either email me on my Twitter feed, the email keo@keo.co.za. You know my Twitter feed. You know the SA Rugby magazine handles where you'll get hold of Zels. On our WhatsApp channel, look for information. On the YouTube comments, drop a comment and tell us where you are, which city or village you are in the world, and where you go to watch the South African teams play.
Beautiful.
Or the Bok teams play, and we'll give you guys shout outs and just like make people aware, because there's an incredible global community of Bok rugby supporters, and where you watch it internally as well. But for the South Africans, because we said the prize was only applicable to South Africans, you got to tell us why you love the show. I think we've had something like 500 or 600 entries in the last couple of days. Go to that WhatsApp channel. Aister will post everything there. Fill in that little form and tell us why you love it. And you can win this amazing prize from Sterco, 42,900 Rand for that inverter. Shaping the future of these oaks, and they're certainly shaping our value of prizes. So thanks to the guys. Thanks to Mike Sharman at Retroviral. He's always looking out for us and helping us. We've spoken about everything. What we haven't spoken about is the Japanese League and Top 14. I want you to take us through. You do that incredible Saffers rap on SA Rugby Magazine.
Oh, fine.
And take us through who did what this weekend, and again showcasing what's out there in quality of Springboks. We looked at that 56-strong squad that Rassie has chosen as an alignment camp. We know what's going on in the URC, but abroad, who's doing what? When it comes to the Saffers.
And Curtly Orange were back on the score sheet this week for Mitsubishi Dynamos, but they lost 38-37 to Honda Heat. Honda Heat have got Janku Swanepoel and Franco Mostert. So that's some of the results and action from Japan. And then in France, Kobus Reinach and Jan Saventain were on deck for Montpellier and their 38-30 win at home. Home defeat to Toulon. Saventain got a yellow card in that game, so a little bit aggro from Jan Saventain. And then Jeremy Ward and JJ van der Mescht were on deck for Stade Francais. They won 39-37 against Pau in Paris. So a bit of action then. Obviously, another Saffo abroad. We mentioned him earlier in the show. Adhir Snyman doing duty for Leinster.
Oh, and you've got to give credit to the Stormers for softening up Leinster in Dublin, because this was a one the Ospreys could have pounced on. Okay?
The Stormers get credit for everything. Eh?
Everything, okay? Even in defeat, we are victors.
Wow.
So, yes, I get accused of being biased, of being partisan, of being pro-Stormers, and being pro-Dobber because he's a mate. My point is your point. Obviously, I am. I'm not denying that. I love the Stormers, but I also love South African rugby.
Yeah.
I love the Springboks. I love the Bulls when they're successful. I love the Lions. I love the Sharks. The only time I kind of am a bit guarded is when they play my beloved Stormers. And but I can still say, well done, Lions. You guys deserve the win. I'm not going to say the referee cheated us. I'm not that kind of guy.
I'm looking under the table, mate. You got your fingers crossed.
I'm not that kind of guy. Pinky prop. But I am on the blow at the top of every week. What the hell happened? What are you doing? Charles Kraus. Count, the Stormers lost again. Mate, they've got to hang on to the ball. It's not that we don't want to give them the try. They've got to just hang on to the ball. And the only URC game this weekend is the makeup game. That's the Bulls hosting the Lions. It was a thrilling affair when they were at Ellis Park. Where's your gut feeling going there for now?
Mate, I actually don't know, because I wanted to say Bulls, but I said Stormers to beat the Lions, and I regretted it afterwards. So I might just go with the Lions.
Are you going to put that jersey back on?
I'm 0 for 2 this week. I might put the jersey back on. Let's just see. Let's just see closer to the end of the week.
But can you put a 2025 season
jersey on? I don't
jersey
have one,
on?
mate.
Oh, that's a little thing to Aister. Can you just contact the Lions and get a jersey for Zels? Because you wore that Spider-Man jersey last time.
It was
didn't go
quite
down
nice.
well.
I felt like Jean de Villiers in that, though. I keep thinking of him in that jersey. He stands on the sidelines and those things.
All right, but you Lions, we're going to chat about that one. Obviously, when we talk about Six Nations predictions later in the week, we're going to talk Bulls and Lions. That will be on the Keo and Zels show shorts that we'll be doing that. So follow the WhatsApp channel where we tell you who's going to win at Lofters. And later in the week, also go to the Money Man's Facebook page, and he will tell you where to put your money in the Six Nations, Top 14, Japan 1 League, Super Rugby Pacific, and also the big one in Lofters. For now, it's been wonderful chatting to you, Zels. Thanks for coming to HQ.
Thanks, matey.
We came inside because of the wind. And to all those naysayers out there, I just want to remind you, the Stormers are joint top of the South African Conference.